What do you protect first when night falls? The walls around your city or the cradle inside your home? In ancient Mesopotamia, the answer was both, and an entire unseen army stood watch to make sure of it. Picture a household in Babylon as the sun drops behind the ziggurats. A mother lights an oil lamp. A priestess traces a ward into wet clay above the doorframe. Somewhere beyond the city walls, something with wings the size of a temple roof shifts in the dark. This is the story of that night, told from the outside in. From the gates of the city all the way to the cradle itself. Start at the threshold, because that is where Babylon and Assyria placed their first line of defense. Carved in colossal stone, the Lamasu stood at palace gates and city entrances with the body of a bull or lion, the wings of an eagle, and a bearded human face crowned in a horned headdress. It was not a monster meant to devour. It was a sentinel, fused from strength, intellect, and divine sanction, placed there so that anyone passing beneath its gaze understood they walked under the protection and the judgment of the gods. To enter a Mesopotamian city was to be watched by something that had never blinked. Beyond the walls, in the open sky, a different kind of danger circled. The storm bird Anzu belonged to Sumerian and Akkadian legend, imagined with a lion's head, blade-like talons, and wings broad enough to swallow the sun when spread. Anzu's crime became one of the great turning points of Mesopotamian myth, the theft of the Tablet of Destinies, the very object that held the structure of the cosmos in order. In stealing it, Anzu didn't just commit an act of rebellion. It forced the gods themselves to answer a question every civilization eventually asks. What happens when power falls into the wrong hands? Only when a hero rose to reclaim the tablet did balance return, and the lesson settled over Mesopotamia like dust after a storm. Even the mightiest force must eventually answer to a higher order. Past the fields, where the land turned wild and unclaimed, stood the cedar forest, and within it, Humbaba. Sumerian and later Babylonian tradition, most famously the Epic of Gilgamesh, describe him as a towering giant with a face built to inspire dread on sight. Guardian of sacred terrain no mortal was meant to claim. His task was not cruelty. It was enforcement, punishing those who trespassed on ground set aside for the gods. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu finally struck him down, the epic doesn't frame it as simple triumph. It frames it as a debt. Humbaba's downfall became a warning etched into one of humanity's oldest stories. Ambition always has a cost, even when it wins. Deeper still, past the edges of the living world, lay the domain of the dead, ruled by Ereshkigal. Here moved the Galu, shadowy figures, with twisted bodies and hands built for seizing rather than showing mercy. They were not judges. They didn't weigh a person's virtue before appearing at their side. The Galu simply arrived, dragging the living into the depths below, even, according to myth, pursuing the goddess Inanna herself after her descent into the underworld. Through the Galu, Mesopotamians gave shape to a fear that needed no translation across any culture or century, that death does not negotiate. Elsewhere, on mountains and barren plains, Asag stirred the ground itself into hostility. Sumerian legend painted him as a being surrounded by living stone, so poisonous in presence that rivers were said to boil, and crops to wither wherever he passed. His myth ties him to open rebellion against the warrior god, Ninurta, and when Asag was finally struck down, the land's return to health was treated as more than a battle won. It was cosmic order reasserting itself over chaos. Every plague, every barren season, could be understood through this single defeated figure, and every recovery could be understood as a victory that had already been won once, in myth, and could be won again. Closer to home, threats grew quieter, but no less real. The Rabisu didn't announce itself with wings or storms. Assyrian and Babylonian households feared it as a crouching presence in doorways and dark corners, a demon of ambush rather than spectacle, blamed for sudden illness or misfortune that struck without warning. Its legend reveals something the grander myths don't. That ancient fear wasn't only about monsters on the horizon. Sometimes it was about the corner of your own room, and the unsettling sense that danger could wait, patient and silent, for the moment you let your guard down. Even the city's identity leaned on a guardian, shaped like a nightmare turned political statement. The Mushusu, a scaled dragon with lion's forelegs, an eagle's hind legs, and a serpent's head, became bound to Marduk, chief god of Babylon. Carved into temple walls and palace gates, it wasn't there to terrify Babylon's own people, it was there to declare, to any rival power watching, exactly which god now ruled the cosmic order. Myth, in this case, doubled as propaganda, and it worked for centuries. And when divine punishment itself needed a face, the Akkadians gave it one in Ugalu, a lion-headed enforcer of towering stature, invoked in incantation texts by priests and healers as an agent of both protection and wrath, depending entirely on which side of divine law you stood. Ugalu didn't choose sides out of malice. It simply carried out what the gods decided, a reminder that mercy in this worldview was never guaranteed, only conditional. Which brings the knight back home, to the cradle, where the greatest fear of all was believed to wait. Lamashtu haunted Assyrian and Babylonian households independently of any god's command, imagined with a lion's head, a donkey's teeth, and serpents coiled in her grasp. Unlike nearly every other being in this story, she answered to no one, which made her, in the eyes of frightened parents, the most dangerous force of all. Her legend likely grew from something painfully real, the devastating mortality rates surrounding childbirth in the ancient world, tragedies that demanded an explanation, larger than chance. And so, standing between Lamashtu and the newborn in the cradle, households turned to the very creature that should have terrified them most. Pazuzu, gaunt, wild-eyed, with a canine face, a scorpion's tail, and bat-like wings, was tied to the southwest wind believed to carry drought and disease. Yet Pazuzu was carved into amulets and placed beside sleeping infants on purpose, invited into the home as the one force capable of matching Lamashtu's danger and driving her back into the dark. It's a strange, almost poetic contradiction. The demon parents feared enough to name became the demon they trusted enough to guard their children. By morning, the lamp has burned low, the wards still mark the doorframe, and the household has survived another night the way countless households across Mesopotamia once did. Not through walls alone, but through belief given shape and purpose. These creatures were never just monsters. They were an entire civilization's attempt to make sense of danger it couldn't otherwise explain, and to answer fear not with denial, but with vigilance. We don't carve winged bulls into our doorways anymore, or hang demon amulets over cribs, but the instinct hasn't gone anywhere. We still light lamps against the dark, still stand guard over what we love. If this journey through Mesopotamia's oldest fears held your attention, stay a while longer, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which world of myth deserves the next night's watch.